welcome to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera Season 2. Today's episode is partnered by Perpetual Buzz Experiences. They are an artist representation company with three very basic but lofty goals. They're the launchpad for artists, helping them leverage success in the best possible manner. They also help fund social causes and make sure that people have a good time throughout the process. So be sure to check them out on www.perpetualbuzz.com. 2023 has been very exciting in terms of music festivals happening in India, and we are witnessing a lot of international acts coming down to our country. I'd like to give a very special shout out for the Ronan Keating concert happening in Bengaluru at the Bharatiya City Mall on the 18th of November. Get your early bird tickets on Book My Show. Details are mentioned in my bio. Lollapalooza 2024 just unveiled their show dates, and they're happening on the 27th and 28th of January at the Mahalakshmi Racecourse in Mumbai. Grab your tickets on lollaindia.com. Details are mentioned in the bio. I'm delighted to introduce you all to one of the most accomplished saxophonists, composers, and producers in the world of jazz, Joe Lovano. He's won a Grammy for 52nd Street Themes and received 14 other Grammy nominations for his exemplary work. Joe has won the Critique and the Reader's polls multiple times for categories including Tenor Saxophonist, Musician of the Year, and Jazz Album of the Year. Berklee College of Music honored him with an honorary doctorate for his musical contributions. He's held the prestigious Gary Burton Chair in Jazz Performance at the Berklee College of Music since 2001. Joe Lovano is known for fearlessly exploring new modes of artistic expression in jazz, and he's regarded as a highly influential figure in the contemporary jazz realm. Coming to my special guest, he's none other than Abhay Sharma, who's been playing the saxophone in Delhi and nationally in various music spaces since the age of 15. He's been learning to play funk, jazz, and Indian classical through the less fancied way of hit and trial. Abhay was the founding member of the funk jazz fusion band, the Revisit Project in Delhi. He's worked as a session musician for Shankar Ehsaan Loy, Indian Ocean, Sunidhi Chauhan, Sonu Nigam, Vishal and Rekha Bharadwaj, Adnan Sami, Salim Suleiman, and the list goes on. He's been working with such exemplaries for nearly 12 years now. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to welcome my guest, Joe Lovano, and special guest, Abhay Sharma, who will be joining us shortly for a very special segment of the interview.
Hello, I'm Joe Lovano, and you're listening to Stalwarts of Music with Aditya Veera.
Hi, Mr. Joe Lovano. Namaste. Welcome to Stalwarts of Music. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I look forward to speaking with you about some of these things that we're doing in this music.
Where are you right now? And what's happening around you? You have a very nice room set up. Is this where you rehearse?
This is my studio where I live,
Mm-hmm.
which is maybe 1 hour north of New York City.
Oh,
in the
okay.
Hudson River Valley, they call this area.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful property in the woods, and this is a studio that I had built to play and rehearse and to create music.
Marvelous, marvelous. I have some very interesting questions coming your way as part of our agenda today. So shall we get started?
Yeah, please.
All right. So Joe, tell us, why are you a saxophonist? It is sort of one of more, shall I say, seemingly less accessible instruments for the common man, if I could use that phrase.
Well, I don't know about that. Maybe in your country,
Mm-hmm.
here in the U.S., the saxophone has been one of the leading voices
Okay.
of instrumentalists in the history of jazz and America. From the earliest time, the Duke Ellington Band and Louis Armstrong, and into some of the most creative modern geniuses of the music.
Mm-hmm.
Coleman Hawkins was the first really on the tenor saxophone to really make such an impact and
Okay.
change the world, man.
Mm.
Uh, Back in the 30s, 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
And since that time, all of the saxophonists that have emerged through
Uh-huh.
the year
Yeah.
have changed the course of music and improvised music, especially in jazz. And to name just a few, uh, Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Ben Webster, they were all born in like 1909, 1906, those years. And had a deep passion.
All right.
And the history of jazz is a very deep rooted music, you know,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
that comes from many places, man. And African American struggles through the years, the blues, um, all of the immigrants that came to the States from Europe. My family, I have a history. My grandparents came 1904, 1906, and 13. Those years, all
Mm.
four of my grandparents came from Sicily
Right.
and came to the States and brought all this music with them. You
Okay.
know, they had music in their family. So my dad, who was born in 1925, he would have just turned 98 on the 21st,
Okay.
2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he played tenor saxophone.
Oh wow.
Okay, yeah. So he grew up in the swing and modern jazz and bebop and freer jazz forms, and was one of the main saxophone players around Cleveland, Ohio, where I grew up and was born. His record collection and his knowledge of the history of the music taught me everything as a kid. And I studied and learned from all of his records.
Okay.
And music is like in Indian music, it's a tradition that's handed down
Sure.
generation through the generations. Just like your music has the masters that set the pace
Yeah.
uh, for the new music of today, because it's all a reflection of the music that's been created through the generations.
Certainly.
And that's what jazz is all about. And the saxophone has been one of the main, trumpet also, the
Mm-hmm.
trumpet and the saxophone. If you go to the history in the music, the leading players that have developed through all those generations, the Miles Davises and the Dizzy Gillespies on trumpet, Clifford Brown, Louis Armstrong, and then the saxophone players, Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Ben Webster, Sonny Rollins, who also just turned 93. He's still with us, and he's so blessed, and we're so blessed to have had Sonny Rollins contribute the way he has with his love and passion uh, to explore the music and be himself. His birthday was just September 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And John Coltrane,
Yeah.
and others, Wayne Shorter,
Yeah.
Charlie Parker.
Mm-hmm.
So the saxophone has been one of the most inspired voices in the music, but it's not just the instrument, it's the players
Yeah.
and each personality. So my dad, in his generation, he grew up with all of this
Mm-hmm.
and introduced me to everything, you
Okay.
know. And he heard Charlie Parker live. He heard Lester Young when they came through Cleveland. He heard Thelonious you
Wow.
know. He played with the Lionel Hampton band
Mm-hmm.
in Cleveland in the 50s when Hamp would tour and bring a handful of musicians with him, his
Yeah.
rhythm section and a few key players.
Mm-hmm.
But he would pick up instrumentalists in different towns
Okay.
throughout the. My dad had a chance to play with a bunch of folks, you know. John
Incredible.
Coltrane was a big influence with my dad. I
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of his recordings, and some of the first times I really heard the Indian influence in jazz was through John Coltrane's music
Sure.
and through Miles Davis's music, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Miles also had some bands that had Baudel Roy and different cats that played within the music, and Coltrane really loved Ravi Shankar and
Mm-hmm.
named one of his sons Ravi, who's a close friend of mine, and we play a lot
Yeah.
together. Ravi Coltrane,
Ravi Coltrane. Yeah, I'm aware.
who's one of the real beautiful voices today
Mm.
in, in jazz, you know, and on the tenor saxophone and other horns, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so the Indian influence has been in the music for generations, you
Yeah.
know, as long as, you know, as far as like the idea of jazz is an idea about improvising music with your personal influences. So the music from around the world um, has influenced a lot of flavors and things that have happened in the music through the years, from the Middle East, from Asia, from India, from Africa, the roots of the music, the rhythm, and also the European immigrants that came that were composers, the
Yeah.
Gershwin and you know, so many Cole Porter, so many amazing standard songs. They call them standard songs, right? Broadway music, like music that developed in the States that all of the jazz musicians embraced.
Yeah.
Ella, Ella Fitzgerald and singers, you know, and Frank Sinatra, you know, they made all these tunes famous
Sure.
in the jazz influence, but with a flavor of the world of music. The world of music is what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
especially today. In my music, my compositions, from my travels around the world, and my collaborations with musicians from around the world
Mm-hmm.
are all fueling my ideas.
Incredible.
And I happen to play the tenor saxophone.
Yeah. You did mention a lot of musical heritage and how you're trying to take it forward, considering how rich it is, and it's been passed over from generation to generation, and it's still going on and evolving over the years. And you did mention the aspect of personality. So, what aspect of your personality, your inclination, your sensibility nudges you towards being a musician?
Well, you know, I think it's your blood. It's your blood. It's where you're coming from.
Okay.
For me, my history of my family, that's all in my blood
Hmm.
from Sicily, which was one of the first melting pots with the Middle East and North Africa and
Yeah.
Europe and
Yeah.
Northern Europe and the whole mix of the folks, let's say. Uh,
Yeah.
really, that the study of that and touring there and realizing where you are coming from,
Sure.
your blood, that is in your feeling and your could be in your expression. If you don't treat music like an exercise, that none of that will matter if you just play with a technical approach
Got
and
it.
go up and down your horn and play with precision as fast as you can, just scales and all of the fundamentals of the music are always with you. But my goal has always been to be as expressive as I can
Yeah.
in the way I feel melodic rhythm and try to explore the possibilities
Hmm.
of who I'm playing with, because everybody you play with has different influences. and different blood. You know, when I played with Elvin Jones
Mm-hmm.
or McCoy Tyner, I'm trying to draw from their spirits and their feelings, their deep roots of who they are, where they've been. And I bring where my roots are coming from within that. But yeah, we're interpreting music spontaneously right at the moment together. So that's a magical place to be. And jazz gives us that. It gives us that space of that mystical world of
Yeah.
creating. And for me, that's what's important, you know. So it's your blood, man. It's your deep roots, not just what you know on your horn.
Right. Are you sometimes surprised by the interpretations that people ascribe to your work? Sometimes there can be a scenario where you thought of, composing a song a certain way, and what they hear in terms of your music might be something completely different and new. Is that gratifying, or is that something that you despair?
I think it's beautiful if people want to interpret your music and have their own ideas about how to play it. I grew up learning songs and music that I heard Miles Davis play, or John Coltrane play, or Sonny Rollins play, or Wayne Shorter play, or Lester Young play. But I didn't try to copy the way they played it.
Sure.
I felt like jazz gives all of us an opportunity to play with interpretation
Hmm.
and create new music within the music.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. What sometimes is disappointing if it's done in a very commercial way,
Mm.
where it's a marketing
Gimmick.
tool,
Yeah.
yeah, to live on someone else's glory. You
Yeah.
know, I hear a lot of young cats today that aren't interpreting the music on their own. They're playing it as an agenda to make a commercial product,
Yeah.
and there's not much deep soul and
Mm.
feeling in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be great, and it might do very well
Yeah.
in the marketplace. That's all good, man. It's all good. It's all good. But there's a difference between the real soul music
Mm.
and the real commercial music.
Right. That sort of, got me thinking in another direction altogether. So, what do you feel about musicians who are known for their technical prowess or virtuosity, but may not be able to convey the same level of emotional depth in their playing? So, can virtuosity sometimes overshadow the musicality?
I think it could, sure. I mean, you know, I do a lot through the years. I've addressed a lot of young students.
All right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Starting when I played with the Woody Herman Band in the late 70s, when I
Mm-hmm.
was in my early 20s,
Yeah.
we used to go and play concerts at colleges and
Mm-hmm.
high schools and address young students, aspiring jazz musicians. Also, just some musicians that didn't play jazz yet. They're just learning about the music, what it is, and uh, what it's all about to create music and not just read a part. You know.
Yeah.
So since that time in my early 20s, I had to really play with a rhythm section and talk about my feelings about improvisation
Mm-hmm.
and what I had tried to do to get to the level of closing my eyes and listening and leading and following and playing with a rhythm section,
Yeah.
with drummers, with bass players, with piano players, with guitar players, with other horns, you know? Uh, So through the years, I've had quite a few students that are
Okay.
wizards on their horns,
Yeah.
play great,
Yeah.
but sound terrible.
Mm.
How does that happen? Someone could play great,
Yeah. Yeah.
sound terrible.
Yeah.
If it's only a technical exercise to play, you know? Today, I hold a Gary Burton Chair in Jazz Performance
Yeah.
at Berklee College of Music in Boston. And actually, my first day in this position was 9/11.
Oh.
You believe that? Yeah. So over the last 20 or so years, I've been at Berklee
Mm-hmm.
in this position, the Gary Burton Chair, addressing students from all over the world.
Okay.
And in around 2009, with Danilo Perez, who's artistic director
Yeah.
of the Global Jazz Institute,
Institute. Yeah.
yeah, with John Patitucci and I, Terry Lynn Carrington is involved also,
Incredible.
Kenny Werner. We address the same forum of students, let's say 30 students or 40 students, on an international place, everybody's from somewhere.
Yeah.
And not just from the States. There's
Mm.
been quite a few folks from India and from the Middle East, from
Mm.
all over Europe and Scandinavia, Asia, a lot of Asian students.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's amazing to really address a forum of students talking about jazz as the root,
Mm.
and African American creation, the rhythm. But now in today's music, it's blurred. The whole thing is very blurred.
Mm.
But there's influences from everywhere,
Sure.
and everybody brings in, like I mentioned before, you bring in your blood, man, where you're from,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
And in your compositions, because most of our program, it's all about composition too. Everybody has to be a composer,
Mm.
and we put together ensembles and rehearse original music,
Yeah.
which is so beautiful, because we're all there together. I don't look at it like teacher student kind of thing. We're sharing. I feel I'm sharing the blessings, man, of my life and my experiences, and everybody's at a different level of expression and of, let's say, I don't want to say success as far as like that, but we're all on a different plane of what we do, and young students have never played for people that much.
Mm.
When I came to Berklee, I went to Berklee in 1971 and 2, right after high school. I was 18 or 19.
Okay.
I came there knowing all kinds of music because of my young life as coming up with my dad. I had a repertoire of like lots of tunes that I knew and loved to play. I have students today that don't know any tunes. They've only learned things out of a book or transcriptions.
Great.
I had a student just recently, a piano player,
Mm.
and beautiful player. I've heard him play his music and rehearse in some bands. Anyway, we had a one-on-one lesson, and I had my horn, and he was at the piano, and I said, "Okay, play me something you love to play, man. Play me something, anything." He sat there and looked at, didn't play anything. I mean, it goes by, and
Yeah.
I'm starting to get nervous. I said, "Okay, man." Then I asked him the question. I said, "If you got called, okay, it's 1 o'clock. Let's say at 2 o'clock you got a phone call to play at this club at 8 o'clock tonight.
Mm-hmm.
3 sets. 3 sets.
Yeah.
You start at 8 till midnight.
Mm.
What would you play? You can play in front of, there's an audience, there's people there, whether they're eating or whatever. It's a club, it's a gig. You need to pay the phone bill, right? I said, what would you play, man? He couldn't play anything.
Okay.
But yet, if you put music in front of him and you rehearsed and real, like real tricky, challenging music, he could play the heck out of it.
Mm.
You took that music away, couldn't play. Didn't know what to play. And I say, man, okay, this is a lesson. Here's your lesson. Go and learn some tunes, man. Learn some music that you can play and call a bass player and a drummer. And say what key you want to play it in and play it. The reality of being a musician, to being a jazz musician on the scene, creative player. To me, you have to have a deep reservoir of material and things that you love to play.
Yeah, certainly.
That when you play for people, they're going to sit up and say, oh, yeah? Oh, wow. You think about some of the players like Herbie Hancock.
Yeah.
When Herbie was 20 years old,
Mm.
he knew all kind of tunes, man, and all kind of music. He played with Miles Davis. He was 22 when we heard him on some records at the beginning, man. He was like a deep well of music that he loved to play and had a reservoir of material that he could draw on. By the time he played with Miles, he was ready to take the music into tomorrow. Your moment of now, your present moment right now, as a musician, has to be at a level that you take it to tomorrow. But you can't do that unless you've been somewhere that brought you to this moment. You dig? And that's what I address as a teacher, if you want to say that.
Incredible. Of course, like I was also interacting with Mr. Danilo Perez in my last episode, and he did tell me
Oh,
about.
beautiful. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. So we had him on the show, and we also had Mr. John Patitucci on yet another interesting episode. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just
Both of those cats, man, are so inspired
yeah,
that they're inspiring.
yes,
When we play together,
hmm
we're exploring not only the music, but we're exploring each other.
yeah,
The way I might play a melody is going to be giving Danilo ideas of how to voice chords. And then the way he voices a chord and his rhythm is going to give me ideas on how I'm going to play the melodies. And the same with John.
yeah.
We play together a lot through the years,
Right, I'm aware.
Man, it's such a blessing to play with those cats and to know them and to learn from them, because they bring their blood into the music, where they're from.
Yeah,
Danilo's history, John's history, it's in the present moment, moving into tomorrow, So that's an issue that's really important in this music.
how do you navigate the challenge of appreciating an artist's technical skill while also trying to acknowledge their style and approach that may not personally align with your idea of, say, jazz music? How do you go about something like that? A
Well,
modern form. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of different record dates where I got called to play as a soloist
hmm
in all kinds of different situations.
Yeah.
And if you embrace the world of music, it's
hmm
all one.
Yeah.
It's all one.
Yeah.
And as a soloist, you come in and you try to give the leader or whose record date it might be.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give them what they why did they call you? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
uh, you want to give them what they need and somehow still play
Yeah.
who you are too. For an example, one example is like crazy. Tony Bennett called me to
Mm.
play
Marvelous. Yeah.
on his recording Cheek to Cheek with
Mm.
Lady Gaga.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It won a Grammy that year,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
2018 or
Yeah.
17,
It was
somewhere.
around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Tony called me. I had played with him with the Woody Herman band. He was kind of following my career through the years and was hip to some of my recordings, and we played a handful of times, but I was always in a big band setting in the saxophone section.
Mm.
I never played a small group gig with him,
Yeah.
with just a rhythm section. But anyway, he called me for this date.
Mm-hmm.
And him and Lady Gaga with the big band. And
Yeah.
all the music was there. There was some solo moments
Mm-hmm.
open
Mm-hmm.
for me to overdub and to play.
Yeah.
So, man, I ended up playing on 3 or 4 tunes on that date. And it was challenging, man, but it was beautiful. It weren't big long solos. There was 16 bars. One
Mm.
tune had an 8-bar phrase, but just for me to improvise
Yeah.
inside the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my approach was, I didn't go in there and just try to show off who I was.
Mm-hmm.
I had to deal with that music, man.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony Bennett sings like so beautiful, and Lady Gaga like really knew the music. They had a beautiful blend together,
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
lot of love. There's a lot of love right there.
Mm.
Okay. So I just tried to be a part of that whole embrace. And I was thrilled to be on that particular date. But there's been other dates through the years that have with Vince Mendoza and other folks, with Peter Erskine and John Abercrombie,
Mm.
John Schofield, where we've done some dates where we weren't the leaders.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we were in a recording session,
Yeah.
and you just have to hear the music, study it, know what you need to do to make it work, and that's my approach there. You know,
Right.
and try to do my best.
I'm sure that's been constant throughout your pursuit and for many more years to come.
Living in New York, man, it's been
Yeah.
incredible. I moved to New York in the mid 70s,
Oh, wow.
and, and the whole scene in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
the multicultural community in
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
multi generations,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, in the music,
Yeah.
master players that you when I came to town, were playing all over the town, and I would go in here and meet and sit in and through the years, the melting pot of New York City in the music world.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. I had a very beautiful opportunity to play in some bands with like Machito
Mm.
and Mario Bauza and some cats from the real Cuban, Latin, Puerto
Yeah.
Rican
Amazing.
scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with some really bad cats. Played like amazing.
Mm.
I was a young and up and coming,
Yeah.
and but I was getting around and getting called for some amazing opportunities
Yeah.
that taught me a lot, man, about that multicultural world
Yeah.
and the embrace about the music and the people. It's all about the people you play with that
I
you
could
develop.
hear a lot of that in your record Cross Cultural. I could hear a lot
Cross
of that.
culture.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well,
Incredible record.
that recording and that band, my band Us Five,
Yeah.
Esperanza Spalding, and
Mm.
two double drummers, Francisco Mela from Cuba,
Yeah.
and Otis Brown III from Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah.
They're the way they mix together with their roots.
Yeah.
Also, they're both like drummers,
Mm.
studying all the drummers and technically developing on their instrument, but
Yeah.
their blood different. Mela's from Cuba. He's got this other kind of beat and feeling in his playing. Otis is from Newark, New Jersey. He's got this other kind of funky beat and things that come out in his playing. That mix, that cross-cultural mix,
Yeah.
was what that date was about. Lionel Luecki also on guitar,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Esperanza on bass, and Peter Slavov on bass, who's from Bulgaria.
Yeah.
James Weidman on piano. You know,
Yeah.
the tunes I wrote for that session, and to play with that ensemble, that's what that was all about. You know,
Certainly.
thank you for mentioning that, because that, for
Yeah.
me, that was one of my highlight recordings on my in my catalog from Blue Note Records.
Very compelling. Very compelling. You know what? I would love to have a signed copy of that, a signed physical copy someday. Yeah. That's a dream.
Well, you'll have to send me your address.
I will, certainly. You've shown your interest in unique and unconventional instruments like the holochrome, I read somewhere.
Hmm.
So, what drew you to this instrument and how do you incorporate it into your musical compositions and performances?
Okay, so the holochrome, for folks who aren't hip to it, uh, I'm one of the only ones who have documented some recordings on this instrument.
Yeah.
Uh, Starting with maybe my session with my nonette called Streams of Expression,
Mm-hmm.
that Gunther Schuller also wrote some The Birth of the Cool Suite, and I wrote the suite Streams of Expression. That's also on Blue Note. Okay, the holochrome is a instrument that was conceived and made in Belgium, in Brussels,
Yeah.
by a very close friend, Francois Louis,
Mm-hmm.
who makes mouthpieces. I've been playing on Francois's mouthpieces since the mid 80s. And I play a handmade wooden mouthpiece, like clarinet wood, at
Mm.
granadilla wood. So Francois, for Brussels 2000, was commissioned to make this instrument for a composer, and a piece that was going to be performed in Brussels. Not for me, for someone else. This cat, Fabrizio Casol,
Mm.
beautiful young player, man. Okay, so it's a double soprano saxophone. All right, so it's two soprano,
Yeah.
kind of fused together with one keyboard down the center. Okay, but there's two mouthpieces that are also made together. Francois made this mouthpiece. It has two chambers. So each soprano goes into a chamber of the mouthpiece, right? So you have two reeds, two bodies, but one keyboard down the center. So each key is cut in two parts. So if you play the key in the center of the key, you're playing a unison on both horns. Okay? If you release the bottom part of the key, let's say I release the bottom, I'm playing an F.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, saxophone. I release the bottom part of the F key on my right hand. I release the bottom part of the G key.
G key.
Okay, it opens tone holes on this body.
Yeah.
So now I'm playing an A on this horn,
Mm.
an F on this one.
Incredible.
So I'm harmonizing. You can harmonize as you play.
Mm.
And there's two octave keys. So each horn, you could split tones and play, It's an amazing, incredible instrument that Francois conceived. There's only one horn.
Mm.
Only one horn on the planet. So I had it for about 6, 7, 8 years.
Wow.
and recorded quite a few things. I think on Cross Culture, there's a moment on an holochrome with my band Us Five, and I was touring with it. But then it came to a moment where Francois needed to have the horn back in Belgium to show. It was in the Adolphe Sax Museum in Belgium, in Brussels. And right now he has the instrument and it's more on display for people to see because it's like one of the first new instruments made in the saxophone world, the woodwind family, let's say. So hopefully in the future there's gonna be more than the one horn, you know.
Yeah.
He meets me when I go to Europe and brings it to some concerts.
Incredible.
But that's an amazing instrument because you could harmonize what you play. And you could also just play on one body. If I turn it and I only buzz on one reed, I'm playing a pure soprano sound
Got it.
on this body. And then if I buzz on both reeds, then I have the opportunity to harmonize on the left body with what I'm playing on the right side.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's fun. But I have a collection of instruments from around the world, though. Also, just like a lot of the flutes, wood flutes from the Middle East and Asia, and I have some Indian flutes. You know, I have some flutes from Colombia. I played in Bogota, and I met a flute maker that brought me some beautiful wooden flutes, all in different keys. You know, 6-hole flutes where you have to find the half steps, you know, not like non-chromatic instruments. And when I go on tour, I study these horns. I play in a hotel, and they're not, you know, I could play in a hotel room on some of these flutes, and they're not too loud. And it's like a meditation.
Yeah.
I treat it as a meditation on tones. And I have a kaval, which is from Bulgaria, also that Mike Brecker was playing. Because Mike was studying Bulgarian music and his last recording and some things that haven't been released yet.
Okay.
Things he was working on at his last, 5 years or something. Some real music that was really amazing, beautiful music, and really very challenging rhythm and the way he executed it also. Mike Brecker was amazing, man, in his execution on his horn.
Right.
But also there was a deep love and beautiful quality in his delivery, and his compositions too. Dave Liedman and I and Mike, we formed the Saxophone Summit together around 1999 and toured in Europe and played a lot together. There's one recording with the three of us called Gathering of Spirits on the Telarc label. And then Ravi Coltrane joined the band when Mike was untimely passing in 2007, I think. Ravi joined the band. But on one of the tours with Mike and Dave, we were in Budapest.
Okay.
And a friend of Liedman's brought all these instruments, all these flutes and percussion and different instruments from Turkey. And not Turkey, excuse me, from Bulgaria and Hungary, Poland, Romania. So there was an instrument called a teragato, which is a Hungarian folk instrument that he brought and played with us. He sat in. Forget his name now, man. He played beautiful. He's a friend of Dave's. And I was real interested in this horn, teragato. So I ended up getting that from him that night. And that was in 2003, I think.
Okay.
And so for the last 20 years, I've been studying and playing this instrument, which is beautiful. And it's been documented on my most recent releases on ECM, my Trio Tapestry. There's been 3 releases: Trio Tapestry, Garden of Expression, and the most recent, Our Daily Bread. And there's moments with the Terragato on all 3 of those dates, you know. And it's a real soulful, beautiful, incredible, earthy richness in this sound. It's like a soprano range, like a soprano saxophone,
Yeah.
but it's wood and it comes apart like a clarinet with open holes. So there's a different kind of quality of sound that passes through this instrument when you breathe through it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all those things really interest me a lot, and they all fuel my ideas when I play the tenor saxophone or
Mm.
any other, you know. When you experience those folk instruments that are timeless instruments, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I just did a great workshop
Mm.
in Lupod, Croatia.
Okay.
It's a little island in the Adriatic near Dubrovnik,
Mm.
Croatia.
Got it.
With I was there, like, who hosted Tana Alexa
Mm-hmm.
and Antonio Sanchez.
Yeah. Rama.
This was the first annual festival there.
Oh
Okay,
wow. Okay.
this was just at the end of August. You know, this was
Oh, very
just now.
recent. Mm.
Yeah, and there was only 13 students, and there were a couple groups that played. David Sanchez's band
Mm.
and Antonio Sanchez's band
Yeah.
with Tana, and there was some Croatian musicians that played. There were 3 concerts and jam sessions each night.
Okay.
And the 13 students that participated were all from Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia. There was a young lady bass player from Holland,
Mm.
and there was this one cat from Ethiopia.
Okay.
He played this instrument, one string,
Mm.
with on the bottom, you know, it had an arm, one string, and like a little box that vibrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Played it with a bow, or he plucked it, you know. Man, this instrument was from the dawn of time.
Mm.
One of the most like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call it, man. But
Yeah.
he played and he improvised and he created a feeling. Talk
Mm.
about playing from your blood. This young cat from Ethiopia, man, yeah. So that was really beautiful experience there.
Got it.
Uh, to be with Antonio and David Sanchez and Luis Padona on piano and all the cats that were there. Ricky Rodriguez on bass played. They all played with David Sanchez's band, you know, and we addressed these young players, man, very
Yeah.
uh, young musicians that are into creating some music, you know,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and we had a beautiful 3 days, man. But I just wanted to mention that this cat from Ethiopia with the one string contributed some beautiful sounds, feelings, you know? Yeah.
Great to
And
know that.
I looked at like a jazz workshop, jazz, but he wasn't playing like bebop or any kind of stylized anything.
Yeah.
He was vibrating on tones, you know? And
Yeah.
that's what jazz is all about, really.
Truly.
Jazz is an idea about being yourself and contributing who you are.
Sure. It's time to introduce our special guest, this young gentleman from India called Abhay Sharma. He's
Oh,
got
great.
he's got a band called the Revisit Project, and he's a distinguished saxophone player, writer, and a composer. So before I introduce him, I'd like to play a little bit of his rendition of a Miles Davis song. See if you can spot this one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Abhay Sharma for you. So that was a sneak peek of Mr. Abhay Sharma. What do you think, Joe?
Nice. Well, that's the song Green Dolphin Street,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not written by Miles Davis.
Yeah.
It's a very famous song in the jazz lineage and the jazz standard repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
And nice to hear him play, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful.
Let's
Look
call
forward
him.
to meeting him now.
Let's call him now. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about Miles, when Miles plays a tune, he makes it his own.
Yeah.
So you might think it's his tune, but he's playing some famous song. Like the song Stella by Starlight,
Mm-hmm.
that famous song. Somebody asked me one time, who wrote Stella by Starlight? I said, Miles Davis. Because every version he played was so distinctive and he made that tune his own, you know.
Yeah.
The same with this on Green Dolphin Street, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some very famous, beautiful recordings of Miles playing that tune, but of many people playing that tune also
Yeah.
through the years, you know.
I think it's
That's
time
one
to.
of those songs. That's one of those songs that teach you how to play.
Yeah. There we have Abhay Sharma finally here with us.
Hey man, nice to meet you.
It's an honor. It's an honor, sir.
Sound nice, man. Go ahead, carry on.
Uh, what do I say? I mean, it's the first time that I'm meeting a saxophone hero, and I I would not really speak much. I want to listen to you. And how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I'm having a wonderful interview with Aditya here.
Yeah, he's exceptional. Yeah.
And we're speaking about many things. Have you tuned in? Have you been hearing what we've been speaking about?
I just got the last part about on Green Dolphin Street.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Because we covered a lot of ground about the history of the music and where I'm coming from and the whole idea about what is jazz, you know, and jazz is an idea about putting your ideas together and create music within the music, you know. I have to ask you a question now. Have you played with an organ player and a drummer on the stage?
A keyboard player, not maybe not an organ player per se, but yeah.
I mean, what were you playing along with there?
Are you talking about a tune, sir?
No, the rhythm section that was behind you when you
So
were just
there was a bass player, there was a drummer, a keyboard player,
in
and
the
a guitar.
organ.
Yeah.
Right now, are those friends of yours? And you recorded together? You played together?
Yes, we have a band together. Yes, in Delhi,
Oh.
sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, I wanted to know if you were playing with people that you play with, and not just over a track that was already recorded. You know.
I do play over tracks just to practice, but that only happens when I'm about to put that up on Instagram or some other social media platform, because I hardly get people to back me in that sense. But I mean, when I'm preparing a tune, sir, I don't use the backing track. I'm usually just trying to highlight the changes firstly and work on them. That's how I've been working here, listening to all of you, listening to Parker, listening to Dan Ball, listening to Phil Woods, and
I could hear that. I could hear that in your playing, man. Because that's the thing when you're playing and you're creating music and you're just vibrating on the melody. The melody is the most important thing because then your solo develops from the melody and from ideas are fueled by the melody and the rhythm within the harmony, you know. And that melodic rhythm that you create on your own is who you are. That you everyone has their own melody that you have to find. And as you're developing as a player, that comes more and more into focus. You know what I mean? But I grew up playing with a lot of organ players. Okay. My dad's groups in the 60s when I was a teenager, he had a lot of groups with organ, B3, drums, tenor saxophone. Most of the clubs around Cleveland did not have a nice piano.
Okay.
Right. So there was a lot of clubs where you'd pull up with the B3, with the organ. This is before synthesizers and keyboards.
The Jimmy Smith era? Is this?
Yeah. Yes. My dad was born in 1925. Jimmy Smith was maybe 27 or 8 or something, you know. That generation.
Okay.
And everybody was influenced by Jimmy Smith also. But there were all over the country and the States, there were some great organ players and scenes where you could pull up to a corner tavern and bring the B3 and a drum set and a tenor saxophone and play. Turn any place into a jazz room, right? That era was really incredible. And all the bands toured on what they call the Chitlin circuit throughout the States. And when you would play somewhere, you'd play for 5 or 6 nights, sometimes 2 weeks in one club, and then go Pittsburgh, Cleveland, to Detroit, to Indianapolis, to Chicago, West Virginia. Anyway, some of my first gigs were on the road with Dr. Lonnie Smith, great organ player. He was living in Detroit at the time. We're talking like 1974, right? So I'm 21 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And Lonnie was living in Detroit and was looking for a tenor saxophone player. He came to Cleveland with Lou Donaldson.
Of course, the old guy.
Yeah. Lonnie came to Cleveland with Lou and was asking him, he heard about me. I wasn't there. He heard about me and he got my phone number and ended up calling me, and I went to Detroit and started to play with him. During that same period, this is right before I moved to New York City, brother Jack McDuff also came to Cleveland and had a band with 2 tenor players. And each town he would go, he'd use an alto and a baritone from the local town, right? Let's say he played in Philadelphia. He'd have his 2 tenor players. He'd get an alto and a baritone for the gig, you know, and have 4 saxophones. So they came to Cleveland and played this club called the Smiling Dog Saloon, which was a famous club in Cleveland between 1970 and 75, right? Miles played one of his last gigs there before he kind of took a little retirement in the late 70s. Anyway, I took my dad to hear Miles, and he heard Miles with Bird.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in the late 40s, 48, 49. Anyway, my dad was hip to Bitches Brew and some of the records Miles' later date, so he wasn't surprised by the music. But I remember bringing my dad to the club and hearing Miles. That was funny. But anyway, brother Jack McDuff, I played baritone and then went on the road with him for a while. And to play in these clubs with the B3, with those 2 Leslie speakers and the rhythm section, and play with no mic, no PA. You had to project. You had to develop a sound that would be able to project with a rhythm section like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, like, you know, experiencing that turned me into the player that I've become, having those kind of roots.
Are you saying harmonic rhythms as well? Like,
yeah, the harmonic rhythm, but just the sound of the room, the sound on the stage with no mic, no monitors, with the organ and the drums.
A visceral experience.
To project without any PA system. That's why Gene Ammons played like that, and James Moody, and some of Sonny Stitt, and some of the players that you listen to, we hear them on record, but when you heard them in a room, and sometimes there was not like today. Today is like state of the art monitors and sound systems and all of that, all of those players, man, from the history that we love and that have inspired us, they had these tones, like Cannonball Adderley's tone in a room, the vibration. I mean, if you heard him, if you were able to hear him, like I was so fortunate to have, man, it sends you to the woodshed another kind of way, man. And that's why today I try to play as acoustic as possible with some of my band, with no mic, no PA system, and try to feel the vibrations and my sound around me and to project into the room. You know what I mean? So that's an important thing about developing your tone, the tone quality, the way you practice, from triple pianissimo throughout the whole horn, and triple forte, and everything in between. So you can develop a tone quality that's not just one-dimensional. That's a real important thing. And then when you go to record and you're playing into a mic, it's the speed of your air. It's there's a lot of issues that come into it about recording your personal sound when you're in a studio, That's something that you learn more and more every time you do it. So have fun, man. Good luck. Did you have any questions or something you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, because I'm an alto player here in Delhi, and I've recently gotten into the tenor as well, like maybe a few years ago. And of course, I love Hank Mobley. I love Sonny Stitt, Sonny Rollins, and of course Lou Donaldson, and everyone's there. And I've always wondered how did you react to like a Coltrane or an Eric Dolphy, uh, you know, having been listening to Parker before, which is more blues influenced. Of course, you can hear the blues and trains playing as well.
Oh, of course. Coltrane played with some famous blues singers, man. Ma Bell and some before he when he was playing alto. Yeah. Coltrane emerged on tenor, but he was on the scene on alto for a while in the early 50s. Played with Dizzy Gillespie's band on alto, and also then on tenor. But by 1954 or something, he started to emerge more on tenor. With the Miles Davis period in 55, Yeah. But prior to that, Coltrane was on alto and came to Cleveland with a blues band, 1950. And my dad heard him, met, and played at a jam session with him in the early 50s. So Coltrane was today's Coltrane's birthday, by the way. You know
that? Yeah, I mean,
yeah. Coltrane would have been 97 today.
Yeah.
My dad's birthday was September 21st. He would have been 98. So they were like a year apart. And Coltrane played in Cleveland quite a lot, man, through the years. But this early time, my dad played in a jam session with him, right? With all local players. And from that moment on, my dad loved Coltrane so much, he had all his records, right? So my dad's record collection is what I grew up with. I was born in 52, right? Mm-hmm. So by the time I'm like 10 years old or whatever, right? My dad's record collection was like a lot of Coltrane, a lot of Charlie Parker. He heard Bird live too. He heard Bird with Strings, came to Cleveland. Also around 1948, 49. And with Miles. Miles came to Cleveland with Bird. Anyway, that was my dad's generation. So his records were everything for me growing up. So I heard Coltrane, like with the Eric Dolphy recordings, live, like the Village Vanguard.
Yes.
And then into the later period, Coltrane, Meditations, Kulu Se Mama,
The last two albums.
Ascension, Interstellar Space.
Yeah. Jupiter.
Those recordings were in my dad's records, right? Because he was, every time a new record would come out, he would get it. And he was like, my dad was a beautiful musician, right? But he had a lot of direction, but he was coming from Gene Ammons and that school, Illinois Jacquette, Gene Ammons, Lester Young, Charlie Parker, and yeah. So when I heard those records, I was listening. I was a kid, until my young teenage years, right? Coltrane passed in 1967. I was 14. And I remember there was a jazz radio station in Cleveland, 24-hour jazz station. And when Coltrane passed, they played Coltrane the whole 24 hours. And my dad was taping with a reel-to-reel tape.
Yes.
He was taping off the radio. So I remember that, man. I was 14 and I was hearing all kind of music from John Coltrane's catalog, his recorded life, really, So I was hearing it all kind of as one. And even though there were different periods, you could hear his development and where he was going all the time, man, and what he was studying and the Indian influence. By the time the Dolphy band started to happen, 1960, 61, when he left Miles, you hear live from the Village Vanguard. There's a bunch of cuts, the tune India, and different collaborations with double reeds and different players, like with drones and sounds, and then of course Alice Coltrane's music, so that real spiritual quality that started to come into his music was about his embrace about the universe and the world of music and the different peoples around the world,
Sure.
So it's really all as one, There's some new recording that just came out, live at the Village Gate,
okay,
with John Coltrane and Eric Dolphy with the band, with Elvin and McCoy, and Reggie Workman on bass.
Okay.
1960, 61. It was some tapes they just found. Okay. So they played this concert at the Village Gate, was a radio broadcast. When they played, it was on the radio one time. Boom. But they had those tapes in the New York Public Library, the archives.
Sure.
They were just discovered and just released now, like 2 months ago, just now. Yeah, you have to look for that. So live at the Village Gate. Let me show you the cover, because they sent. I have a copy. One sec. You see that?
Yep.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. And man, it's beautiful. There's like some different tunes on here too. They play up My Favorite Things is one side of a record. Side B is When Lights Are Low and Impressions. The second record, side C, is Greensleeves, that tune, for the whole side, and then Africa for the whole side. So Yeah.
I saw Reggie Workman's interview recently about Coltrane. So that his name came up. So I mean, all of these guys, like even McCoy and Elvin or all these guys, they have huge followings, a following in Delhi. You know, if you would ever come here,
Beautiful.
meet some of the other musicians here, and not just Delhi, it's Bombay, everywhere. I think we're all, of course, we're too young. At least I'm too young to at least know some of these people. And but it's just that my obsession with music happened with Parker, and I've been incessantly trying to understand how Train's sound also works. But it's just so different from everything that I hear. Like,
well, you know what? One thing, there was an interview with Coltrane. They asked him, because he was a total Charlie Parker disciple, Coltrane. So same with Sonny Rollins. And they asked Coltrane something about, we know how much you love Charlie Parker, but you don't sound like him.
Yeah.
And he said, I had to find something else to play.
Because the alto was done?
No, because Bird said what he was saying. Coltrane had to say what he needed to say. But he knew every Charlie Parker. He was total Charlie Parker disciple. He knew it inside out. There's an early recording of Coltrane playing Cherokee and some things. Did you ever hear that? He was in the Navy.
Yes, I've heard those recordings.
Yeah, and you hear him trying to play like Bird on alto.
But I think even then, if I may just tell you that, even then, from my Indian ears, from the Eastern perspective, I've always been able to recognize that this is something else. That's what I've always understood about Train. That's why I've never been able to wrap my head around it, because Phil Woods, Cannonball Adderley, Jackie McLean, you can still hear the Bird influence, Sonny Stitt, when he plays the alto. But I've just never been able to figure out where did Train, come from. There's no, you can't hear where it's coming. It's super original in that case, maybe.
Well, he's coming from the blues for sure. He's coming from being inspired by Bird, but he's also very inspired by Lester Young, and he's inspired by singers, a lot of blues singers. And he's also, I think, developed a conception about harmony. Like by the time he recorded Giant Steps, the cycle of thirds and modulations, different, not just 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. He created within that, he developed a way of playing through in thirds, and Giant Steps, that tune, by the time he recorded that wasn't the beginning of that. That was like he had been evolving and developing a way of playing. When you listen to the early recordings, he was already incorporating different harmonic ways of going to the 4 chord on a blues. He was a thinking study. He studied and practiced and worked on ideas of his own doing, from being inspired by everybody. And also having Sonny Rollins, him and Sonny coming up together. Now, Sonny just had a birthday. We were speaking before. September 7th. Sonny was 93. Still with us, man. God bless him. He's so beautiful. We're so blessed to have had Sonny be Sonny the way he has been all these years, with the love and the passion and seriousness, and dedication, and giving. He's one of the most generous, beautiful peoples, man, that we have. And him and Coltrane inspired each other to be themselves, not to play like each other, but but they're both Bird disciples and figured out a way of being themselves by the inspiration. Charlie Parker, and Charlie Parker's crowd. Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk. Sonny's one of the only cats who really played a lot with Monk and Bud. When he was a teenager, he was 17, 18, 19 years old. Sonny's first recordings playing with Bud Powell and Thelonious Monk at that young age. Sonny developed a way of playing like nobody else, man, because of who he was playing with, not just studying the saxophone or all of that. Of course, that is everything too. But who he played with and coming up with Max Roach and all those cats, same with Coltrane, man. You listen to those early records, the way he's dealing with everybody he's playing with. You know, I played a lot with McCoy Tyner and Elvin Jones, you know, through the years. My recording, Trio Fascination, I don't know if you know that date, on Blue Note with Dave Holland and Elvin Jones. That was 1997. 1987, I was in Elvin's band, 10 years before that, and toured Europe and played in New York. But I met Elvin in Cleveland at that place, the Smiling Dog. He played there in 1975, right before I moved to New York. And I played in a band. I had a quartet that played opposite him. We opened up, right? We played on his breaks. We played the first set, then Elvin played, then we would play a set, and then Elvin would close the night. Steve Grossman was playing with him. You're hip to Steve Grossman.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the serious players in my generation. And that he inspired Mike Brecker and Liedman, everybody, man. Steve was really something else. Man. He just passed recently, man, but he had an untimely passing also. But Steve was in his band at that time. So that's when I first met Grossman and played with him, with Elvin. And then I had an open invitation from Elvin to sit in anytime. Come and play, man. And then he started to call me for some gigs in the early 80s, you know? Man, to play with Elvin Jones and to feel that love and feeling in his beat and to have his embrace on a ballad when he played Brushes, you know? Coltrane, he played the way he played because of the cats he was playing with all the time. Philly Joe Jones, Miles Davis, you know, Wynton Kelly, Red Garland. By the time Coltrane had been dealing with McCoy Tyner in jam sessions during those years in the 50s, before McCoy was in his band. McCoy is 22 on the original My Favorite Thing. Okay. Yeah. And that period there, he was in his early 20s when he joined Coltrane's band after Coltrane left Miles, you know. So I started to play with McCoy in 1999, my first gigs with him. And then I played with him through the years until his last gigs, you know, which were around 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. I think he passed in 2020, McCoy. But those first gigs I played with him was at Yoshi's in Oakland, California. There's a recording of me playing quartet live at Yoshi's with McCoy, with Jeff Tain Watts, and Christian McBride, quartet. That was more like 2005, I think, that record, or 2006 maybe. Anyway, that first gig I played, man, was with Bobby Hutcherson on vibes, Sharnette Moffett on bass, who was another young, brilliant, beautiful musician that passed recently, and Billy Higgins on drum. And the vibrations and the love between Billy Higgins and McCoy and Bobby Hutcherson And also Charnette, because Charnette's father was Charles Moffett. I don't know if you know that name. Charles Moffett played drums with Ornette Coleman, and he's on a few records. There's a live record, The Golden Circle. It's Charles Moffett. Yeah, David Isaacson on bass. But Charles Moffett played at Coltrane's funeral with Ornette, because Coltrane's funeral was Ornette Coleman played and Albert Ayler. And Albert Ayler was also from Cleveland. I don't know if you're hip to Albert Ayler that much. He was one of the pioneers in the real spiritual,
the avant-garde
power, cosmos kind of music, you know. Yeah, and also Albert was someone who influenced Coltrane too. That period. Coltrane loved Albert Ayler and really embraced him. And with Archie Shepp, and there was that period there. Albert passed in 1971, I think, after Coltrane. But Coltrane got him his record deal on Impulse. He was instrumental in promoting Albert Ayler's career. But he was from Cleveland, too. And so I grew up with like Tad Dameron, who was from Cleveland, who was the main architect in bebop, who my dad played with, and Albert Ayler, who was the main pioneer in the more avant-garde, freer jazz flowing music, you know. So again, for me, that kind of became one, you know. So my music today is influenced by this whole mix of things from my roots, you know. But getting back to McCoy, man, traveling with him, touring with him, playing with him on stage was so spiritual and powerful and beautiful. Beautiful in the sound and in the feeling. We played in Paris one time. This kind of leads to something about Coltrane. We played in Paris, and I did this interview. This journalist, you know, and he was like freaking out about hearing me with McCoy, right? And he was, man, I don't know how you did that. You know, and he started talking about Coltrane and McCoy. Yeah, you know, like, because I wasn't approaching it like to try to stand in Coltrane's shoes. I'm playing with McCoy, his band, okay? His music, his direction as a leader also on stage. So, you know, this guy's expecting me to play like 10-minute solos on every tune and really stretching out, you know, like we're used to hearing when McCoy was with Coltrane's band. Sometimes McCoy hardly played. Like he played a little bit. He played, not that he didn't play, but Coltrane would play like long solos, right? We hear all these recordings, you know, now. So this guy's expecting me to do that. But I'm playing with McCoy. So I had to tell him, I said, you know what, man? When McCoy played with Coltrane, he was in Coltrane's band. I'm playing with McCoy in McCoy's band. He's leading. If McCoy plays 2 choruses on a tune and looks up at me, I'm not going to play 5 choruses. If McCoy played 5, then I would maybe play more. I would play maybe 5 or 4, something. I wouldn't play 10. I'm following McCoy's lead. Yeah. And so if McCoy plays 3 choruses, man, and gives it to me, I might play 2. Let him come back in, play again, or whatever. You know what I mean? To shape the music, the moment of now is so important. to shape the inner music and to be aware of the structure, the sequence of events, how you trade with the drummer, how you'd play, where the bass solo might be. There's a lot of elements that come into play when you're creating music together, you know? And that's why I played with McCoy all those years, man, because he felt it was a quartet. It wasn't the Joe Lovano band with McCoy Tyner on piano. It was a McCoy Tyner band featuring Joe Lovano, right? And man, having that embrace, man, I learned so much, man, about being a leader and all kinds of things about life and spirituality and the embrace of all things, man.
But just one more thing. I mean, whenever I hear you play, there's a certain kind of zoot sims and even that Perkins and Alcone and that understanding is that also part of things that you studied?
Sure, man. Those cats, they all had their own voice and they played with their own feeling. Also, disciples of Bird and Lester Young.
Yes.
But did you ever hear there's a record called Four Tenors?
Yes, I've heard.
Coltrane, Hank Mobley, Al Cohn, and Zoot Sim. Okay. I grew up with that record.
Yeah.
That was in my dad's record collection.
There's another four altos as well, of course you would know, but yeah, I mean there's another four altos or two also. There's another album like that. For the altos.
Yeah. Well, there's the blowing session with Johnny Griffin and it's Johnny Griffin's record with Coltrane and Hank Mobley. And Lee Morgan's first record date. And Art Blakey is on it. Lee Morgan's 17 or 18 or something on that Johnny Griffin record, blowing session. And but anyway, okay, Stan Getz also.
Art Pepper, some of those guys.
Pardon me?
Art Pepper.
Well, Art Pepper, sure. Oh yeah, Art Pepper 11 with Mel Lewis on drums. I was in the Mel Lewis band with Bob Brookmeyer from 1980 to 91, playing every Monday night at the Vanguard. And Art Pepper played with us one time. Yeah. Oh no, Art Pepper was something else. A very special, incredible, crazy person too. Had a wild life.
Yeah, I've read his book.
Beautiful soul, and that generation with Charles McPherson, also alto, serious. And today, Charles McPherson is one of the most beautiful, expressive players, man, on the scene. Right now. But getting back to what we were speaking about, man, Stan Getz was one of the cats, very influential. Also, him and Coltrane. The way there's some on YouTube with them playing together. You seen that? Hacking that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Black videos.
Yeah, beautiful. But Stan. Okay, when my mom and dad were engaged, 1950. My dad was playing in the house band at this club, Lindsay Sky Bar in Cleveland. That was a very, very famous place where Charlie Parker played and Billie Holiday. And he played opposite Stan Getz. And my mom remembered going in here and my dad play when they were just engaged, right? And this is 2 years before I was born. And there was all these stories about Stan Getz and my dad and that whole scene, So Stan Getz was also influential for me, right? The way he played the saxophone and incorporated Lester Young and Charlie Parker in his approach through the years. So when I joined the Woody Herman Band, 1976, okay, I was 23. It was Woody's 40th anniversary year as a band leader, okay? He emerged in 1936. So this is 76. There's a big concert at Carnegie Hall. It's on a recording. It's live at Carnegie Hall, Woody Herman 40th anniversary. I'm in the saxophone section with Frank Tiberi on lead on tenor, who also is a very influential player for me in my life, Frank Tiberi. The stars on the night were Stan Getz, Zoot Sims, Al Cohn, Flip Phillips, Jimmy Giuffre, who wrote Four Brothers, the Condoli brothers on trumpet, and Don Lemon on drums, who was on the original, some of the cats who were on the original Four Brothers, you know. So anyway, that's when I first met Stan Getz and Al Cohn and Zoot Sims and all those cats. And we played our parts. They all played the solos. But there was one moment, you know, the famous tune Early Autumn, that Stan Getz became famous for this solo he played and for this tune, Early Autumn, the original Four Brothers. So I went to the microphone with Stan playing lead and our saxophone section, okay, playing with Stan playing lead. And I had to play my part by memory with Stan playing lead. And man, that moment was the biggest springboard into my career and future up until that point, you know. And to blend with him and to not just play my notes, to make my notes have a feeling inside how he played the lead. And if you know that song, it's an amazing piece of music. Boo boo doo boo dee da da doo doo lee la. Boo boo doo bee boo dee da 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 doo doo boo boo bee da. Boo boo doo bee boo dee da. Bee ba ba boo doo boo dee da. Boo boo doo bee boo dee doo da. And it's voiced like with this beautiful three tenors and baritone, you know, sound. But Stan Getz also, man, his delivery, the way he played and improvised and created music throughout his whole life, he was something else, man. There was an interview with Coltrane too, and they asked him, "What do you think of Stan Getz?" Coltrane's answer was, "We'd all play that beautiful if we could."
Oh.
That's what he said about Stan Getz, man. Was like, when I read, I was like, yeah, dig you, man. And then also they asked Coltrane about what he was trying to reach for and accomplish. And he also said to play more beautiful.
Thus the Johnny Hartman album and that record.
Yeah, that period. You hear it in his whole life, but that period of Love Supreme and Crescent, those recordings, there's a certain quality and beauty in Coltrane's playing that comes through even when he on Interstellar Space with Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Neptune pieces. There's this beauty in his approach. He might be playing many ideas and, you know, in his execution, but the bottom line is the peacefulness and the way he's breathing. Yeah, very beautiful, inspirational.
Yeah. In the interest of time, I'd like to come to the last part of our agenda. So I have this fun little rapid fire for the two of you. So let's get to it, shall we?
Okay.
All right. So first question for the two of you: what is that one song that always makes you cry?
I'd like the master speak first.
Well, that makes me cry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you mean when you play it?
No, when you hear it.
When you hear a song?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's tears of joy when you listen to Charlie Parker play anything he plays. I don't know if I can name one tune, man.
Okay. Okay. What about you,
I would
Abhay?
also include. I'd also include
Mhm.
some of Coltrane's versions of Naima.
Okay.
And you know what? I'm getting a low battery signal on my computer here,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna move and plug it in.
Yeah, sure. Sure. In the meantime, let's hear from Abhay.
Yeah, Avi, what do you think, man?
Uh, I like these two tunes quite a lot. There's Stars Fell on Alabama, uh, Cannonball's version,
Mhm.
and there's another tune called Grandfather Waltz by
All
Bill
right.
Evans. And these two tunes I've been wanting to play since I was a kid, and I'm still struggling to, in the sense that I mean I can play the melody, but just the emphasis that both Cannonball Adderley and Stan gets put soloing through that, even Bill Evans on the tune.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has Wynton Kelly on the piano for Stars Fell, and even his solo, he's singing half of the solo while he's playing the piano. So that's just incredible. Thank you.
Right.
Those
Right.
tunes, they always make me emotional, I can say.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah,
What is
you
your
hear
favorite? Yeah.
the vibrations that come through when you listen to somebody, man.
Yeah.
Like about this question, this made me think of something Ben Webster said. They asked him, "Why do you cry when you play?" Because sometimes you could see some video, Ben Webster's crying while he's playing. And his answer was, "I play so beautiful, I can't believe it." Okay, go on. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's good to know.
What makes you laugh, man? What makes
Yeah.
you laugh
Yeah. Yeah.
when you
On,
listen to some
on
music?
the contrary, what is your favorite guilty pleasure song? To add to that question of Joe.
Ornette Coleman. Do da da do dee da da do 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 dee da da do 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 dee dee da do 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 dee dee da do bee da do dee da do dee da da bee da da do 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 dee do 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 dee do do. In all languages. Coleman. Ornette Coleman makes me laugh when I listen to him play sometimes, man. He sounds like a horse. He's from Texas. He
Yeah.
grew up around horses. He plays a horse sometimes when you listen to Ornette, man. And he makes it fit in the music, in the beat, his like an idea. Uh-huh.
I don't think there's a sax player who like who has that effect on me. Maybe guilty pleasure. Uh, Maybe some pop tunes.
Mhm.
I mean, some I don't know. I've been listening to the song called "My Hair" by Ariana Grande,
Mm.
however,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I like it. Not that nothing to be guilty about it, but yeah, it's definitely not in the realm of things. But yeah, but of course, Joe Sir's answer has one
He nailed it.
name.
Yeah. Jazz has a very rich history of evolution from swing to bebop, free jazz to fusion. In your personal opinions, what do you think is the next frontier of jazz? Or do you think we are in a period of consolidation?
I think the future is in the hands and the inspiration of the players to be yourself and to create some music, man, that is personal. If you would ask that question before anyone ever heard of Thelonious Monk, could anyone project Thelonious Monk or Eric Dolphy? You know, what's the future of music before you ever heard Eric Dolphy? You can't project that. It's like Eric Dolphy came from his inspiration and his like love and passion and the dedication to studying his horn, playing flute with the Byrds, and all of a sudden playing on changes with that, like the Byrds. Bass clarinet, the earth, you know, alto, vibrations coming from Johnny Hodges, and you hear where he's come from. But the way he put together, it's like Wayne Shorter too, man. Coltrane told Wayne Shorter, I like the way you scramble those eggs. What's he was talking about? Eggs are notes and tones and ideas. Coltrane heard things in Wayne's playing that he didn't hear in anybody else's playing, man. You hear Wayne's coming from Coltrane.
Yeah.
Joe Henderson too, man. Joe and Wayne, they emerged like Sonny and Coltrane from Bird. Wayne and Joe, they emerged from Sonny and Coltrane in their own ways of playing. You can't project the future of jazz. The future of jazz is about inspiration and the dedication and love and the ideas of who's playing, not to recreate what someone else already played, but to be a part of it, have it as a part of you, so you could move forward with your own imagination and ideas. No one could have projected Cecil Taylor or Anthony Braxton or John Zorin or even Michael Brecker, man. You hear where Michael's come from, all kind of places, man. But his love and passion, the way he practiced and played, man, 18 hours a day. And be able to fit in so many settings also.
Yeah.
Be able to fit in a lot of settings. That's always what inspired me. And from my early lessons with my dad, about being so versatile that you can play with anybody, any generation, and find a way to be yourself and tell a story within the story. Because you're in a song, all right? There's a story about that song on Green Dolphin Street or whatever. The title of a song inspires me to try to play new music. That tune, All the Things You Are, know that song?
Yeah.
Okay. Just the title, not the harmonies, not the melody, the title. All the Things You Are, you're playing that tune on every tune you ever play. That title, you're playing all the things you are. From day one. If you could play like with that attitude, that's the future of the music. Me. That's what I want to hear from cats. I don't like to hear cats who sound like somebody else. I turn the radio down. I hear a lot of cats play, man. And there's a lot of wizards today that play their horns and they play great and sound terrible to me. I'm not going to mention any name, but I start to turn the radio down. It's a drag. I want to hear more cats get deeper into their personality and their tone and project where they're coming from, not just what they studied out of a book, technically on the horn. That's only halfway, man. That's halfway. Life is too short to get stuck in a routine. As your young players have to develop that routine to get together on your horn. But at a certain point, you have to move into tomorrow, man.
That's beautiful.
When you practice, when you play alone, those intimate moments pull it all together. That's why you have a Keith Jarrett.
Lovely.
Who's the most inspiring for me in the music, man, all these years. Keith Jarrett. And that's from playing with Paul Motion for me and Charlie Hayden. That crowd, that certain crowd, Ornette's crowd, Dewey Redman, Charlie, Paul, Jack DeJohnette, Dave Holland. Those players, some of the most inspired players in music, that people are going to be playing catch up to their music 50 years from now.
I think what Mr. Lovano is also saying, that there's so much music that's already happened, which is so far ahead, and I think that's what you're mentioning as well, sir. That it's already it's already been done, and that's what I can hear in even Wayne.
But if you're hip to it and it's part of you, then it inspires you to take that somewhere else. Yeah.
That's why for me, Herbie Hancock and Weather Report, Yellow Jackets, some of these bands really, I don't know, cemented a kind of music that I wanted to make. And with the band, of course, nowhere near we've reached a point where we can even call ourselves an international act. But we have good 3-4 albums out, and the endeavor is just to keep pushing and have a certain something that we want to say in that case, and not be afraid of being judged by, because I've never been to a New York jazz club, so I get jitters thinking about what if I find a Chad LB there, or Patrick there, or a Joel Fromm in the audience. I mean, or maybe someone like you. I mean, you know what? Preparing for this interview, I didn't know what to say, because I mean, I heard Hank Jones's and you have an album together as a kid, and for me, that I have never been able to take that out of my head, that you, Michael Brecker, from that 80s generation, and even I love David Sanborn, sir. I'll be very honest. I love David Sanborn.
David's a monster, man. He's incredible.
Hank Crawford, David Sanborn, those sax players were a huge influence on my early, funk playing. And I love Maceo Parker. So that world as well. I love all of that. And I know some of the people don't really look up to them, or but yeah, that's what we get introduced to in eastern part of the world. Wynton Marsalis, Branford Marsalis, some of that. But even his band in Buckshot Le Funk, that funk band that he had, that is what used to play on radio for us. Not that, but David Sanborn, a lot of Hank Crawford. So that's what is also a part of my playing. So a lot of rock and funk in that case.
Yeah, man. Beautiful. Well, that's through the generations and through the years. I mean, all of those names you mentioned, man, have you say their name and you hear their sound.
Absolutely.
Personal music. Now, I grew up with Motown. All right, in the 70s, late 60s, from Cleveland, Motown from Detroit, James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, Maceo Parker. Those players were all in my world, my sphere. Junior Walker, saxophone, also, man, King Curtis, Albert Eiler.
Eddie Vinson is a huge, that drunk blues sax playing Eddie Vinson,
Eddie Cleanhead Vinson, who Coltrane played with, man. and very influential. Totally. Oh yeah. That's soul music. And you mentioned Hank Crawford and David Sanborn, the Mike Brecker, that school, there's a certain crowd of, cats had relationships together and created a sound. Randy Brecker, who wrote a lot of the music. Yeah. The Mike and David and Randy, the sound that they had, I mean, that's why they got called for so many record dates. They were in the studio every day doing 2 and 3 different dates from noon till midnight for years in the 70s.
Wow.
Those cats, Ronnie Cuber also on baritone, But like all of those players that you're mentioning, man, and Branford and that Buckshot LaFunk, that was Cannonball Adderley's pseudonym name, That band that he had at that time, and all of that was cats played with a purpose. You have to play with a purpose and believe in yourself. When you believe in yourself, you can play, man, and be free. And that's the bottom line right there. Like, James Carter.
Of course.
Yeah.
James Carter, man. He believes in himself and he lays it down. He tells his story. Whether he's playing tenor, alto, baritone.
Yeah.
We've played together a handful of times, man. And on baritone, James Carter has got a personality in her. Like, we played at Charles Mingus for Jazz at Lincoln Center for Winton in earlier 90s, in the early 90s, when Jazz at Lincoln Center was just starting to be what it is. We did a Charles Mingus concert that Charles McPherson played with Mingus. He was on it. I was playing tenor. Hamiet Blewett on baritone. He's from the World Saxophone Quartet. And James Carter on baritone. Now, Hamiet played with Mingus also, with George Adams on tenor. It was serious voice on tenor. Who passed in the early 90s. But Jimmy Nepper on trombone. Marcus Belgrave on trumpet. So there's like a handful of cats in the band that played with Mingus. So that had that spirit. It wasn't like a college band playing a Charles Mingus arrangement. It was this other kind of thing, this energy and this tone and attitude that we tried to really capture what Mingus was all about. The spirit, not just those notes. Okay, play these notes, yeah. Do something with those notes. Bob, bob, bob. 2 baritones. Bob, James. No, it was so fun to try to play some of Mingus's music with an attitude and not just play the notes. That's just an example of what it's about in this music, to really believe in yourself, man. And that's what you have to do with your band. And whatever you play with an attitude of like that there's love and you're proud. And with that foundation, you will always move into tomorrow with the way you play and not repeat a rehearsal. You don't want to repeat the rehearsal you just had. You want to make that rehearsal inspire you to take it somewhere else. I mean, that's what I try to do as a leader and a player on the scene.
Yeah, I have one last question for the two of you, for as part of our agenda today. It's been such an incredible conversation having the two of you. But coming to the last question, which is a convention in all of my interviews, and I ask all of my guests this very question. Let's hear from the two of you. Down in the distant horizon, what would you like to be remembered as? I mean, I know for Abhay, it's a little too early for that, but But Mr. Lovano, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, as a humanitarian and someone that embraced all things and tried to be as expressive as possible as a musician, yeah, and composer. It's been amazing to develop a career and create some ensembles and situations for others
Mm-hmm.
through the years, having many bands, and they all are still with me today. My Nanette, my trio Tapestry, my current trio with Marilyn Crispell and Carmen Castaldi,
Yeah.
my collaborations with Hank Jones and McCoy Tyner, Elvin Jones, and others, have all been springboards for me to create some situations
Yeah.
for others, I think that's really important, and I feel so blessed to have been able to have a career that is still developing today, and yeah, to share the blessings. Someone
Incredible.
that wanted to always share the blessings.
Incredible. And Abhay, how are you? How are you going to pave your way forward the next couple
Uh,
of years? Yeah.
I'll be honest. You know what? When you're the only saxophone player in a city which has zero history of any horn players, now there are of course quite a lot of sax players in Delhi and across the board. I think I grew up being too much of uh, an arrogant kid, frankly, and the last 8 to 10 years have calmed me down, have made me understand that you have to be a student. And I do resist change every now and then. Like there'll be a young kid who'll tell me something, and I'll be like, okay, no, you know what? I'm your senior. You're not supposed to say. But having heard Mr. Lovano just speak the way he speaks, and it's just generally, I think I'm also learning a lot about life. So primarily for now, I request myself to be a student and let things be, and not rush towards finding success, frankly, myself. And for now, I'd just like to be a good son, a good boyfriend, a good partner, a good friend. And I fail at almost everything, knowing that I'm a human being, frankly. So yeah, just in terms of music, maybe a good hang, firstly, and that's also something. Of course, you have to learn it, and it inherently has to be there as well. But just a student, man, a student of life, and just managing my expectations accordingly, and just a student, man. That's for now. Let it be that, and then we'll see what it goes.
Marvelous. That's a great
That's
answer for a
beautiful.
closure. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And you know what? You're going to always be a student of life, and the lessons that the universe teaches us all the time. You know,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Good luck and have fun, and express yourself on your horn and in your life.
This interview will be additionally aired on Big FM Shillong and Aizawl in the northeastern part of India on the Sunday primetime show, and it'll also be streaming in an audio video format on my YouTube channel, Aditya Veera 1994, and will be streaming across all major audio streaming platforms as well. It's been such an incredible blessing, honor, and a privilege, Joe and Abe. Thank you so much for giving me all the time and the wisdom and all these valuable insights. It's such an incredible privilege having you both on the show.
Thanks for having us. It was really beautiful discussion about all things about life and music.
Feel free to let them know how can they reach out to you.
Well, my website, joelovano.com,
Mm-hmm.
will give everyone a little peek into all kinds of things that I'm doing today and things that are going on.
All right.
And they could reach me through that website also.
All right.
There's just so many opportunities to tune in to performances on the YouTube channel. I have my own YouTube channel, but just on a regular YouTube, there's so much music out there right now that has been captured through the years that I'm very proud of, and that you could tune into and hear my music and also me in other settings with other folks, you know.
Incredible.
So that's a way to tune in, you know.
Great. What about you, Abhay? Do you want to give them your social media handles, etc.?
I'd let this be about the man, frankly. I'm good.
All right.
And I'll find my audience as I grow. And of course, you can find me on sax.abhay. But yeah, this is about Mr. Lovano. And I'd love for people in India as well to check out him and all of the greats like Vincent Herring and all of the other greats that are, still doing what Mr. Lovano has been saying. So yeah, just firstly, I just like to say that this is a dream come true moment for me. I never thought I'd meet you, Kenny Garrett. All of these guys were the heroes that I grew up with. So thanks a lot for the opportunity, Aditya and Mr. Lovano. It really means a lot.
Beautiful. Thank you. Nice to meet you, man. To hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you once again, and please do stay in touch. Would love to see you in India, Mr. Lovano. Please do let me know. I'd be happy to host you in my country.
I look forward to my first trip
Yeah,
at some
yeah.
point.
Make it happen. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care. Have a nice day.
Beautiful.